I got my speech ready, but this I didn't know what to prepare for. I didn't know what to prepare for.
Well, I'll start by saying welcome. I'm talking to Stephen Kirk, who's the author of The Authentic Entrepreneur. You've got a copy of it there, I think.
There you go.
It really exists. It's a real book.
Yeah.
And how long ago did you write it? The launch has been delayed, hasn't it, by the pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, I'm delighted that we had the opportunity to speak in person today, because it wasn't something I began to not expect it. So your question is, when did I start writing the book?
Well, I think we published it. Getting on for a year ago?
No, I think it was March. But
March.
Please.
It's a few months.
Long time ago.
Certainly a few months.
Time ago. Yeah.
So a belated launch event today, and so what is an authentic entrepreneur?
It's basically someone who honours themselves from their heart, and I think this is something that we all have, if you like, a feeling inside about what we're doing is the right thing or the wrong thing. And normally, quite often, we start thinking about it logically, but inside we know that the direction is right or wrong. And so there's two aspects to being an authentic entrepreneur from my perspective. The first is, are you treating in a business your customers and your clients and your staff as if they were your family? Or do you have one personality for them and another one at home? We've all come across people who are absolute bastards in business, but are really nice friends. And one of the early mistakes that I made in my life is bringing my friends into business, because then I noticed that they had a completely different persona. So I started off in business, which is another, maybe we'll go into that. But when I got into business, what I wanted to do was actually have an atmosphere that was a sort of loving atmosphere, if you like, a compassionate atmosphere. And at first, it went quite well. And it was quite a small business then, my first one. And I would take the staff away on holiday with their partners, and I'm into meditation, so we had a meditation room, and we had lots of events for the staff.
And sorry, when was this?
This was 1979, 1980.
So that was really ahead of its time in terms of the sort of well-being aspect of the workplace that you're talking about.
Yes.
Good, 40 years ahead of its time?
Yes,
really.
My issue is that I'm ahead of my time. So I'm already in 2030, and it's only 2021 now. And this is something, part of my own trajectory, which is that I tended to see from a very early on. So I studied computer science, for instance, at university in 1975. I graduated, and it was the second computer science degree ever in England, and probably about the fourth in the world. There was something in the States at the time, and that's because I saw the way things were going. And this was in the days when there were no computers. The computer that we had at Manchester University, where I studied, filled a huge room, and it probably had no more processing power than the laptop today. But I could see the way the future would evolve from the technological point of view. And so it was back then that I began to see. And then the other thing that has influenced my life the whole time is that at my first year university exam I nearly failed. And then through a fortuitous coincidence, the chaplain of the Jewish Centre, a guy called Rabbi Alan Unterman, suggested I learn TM, and the reason, or transcendental meditation, which was, since I come from a Jewish background, complete anathema to my parents. But my mother had a series of mental issues, and I didn't want to go her way. And Alan knew of the family history because, by coincidence, his father was my rabbi in the synagogue in Stamford Hill, where I grew up. So he knew the family history. So my life is full of these coincidences where somebody out of the blue has said something which is very relevant. So if he hadn't known my family history, he would never have suggested transcendental meditation, and certainly my parents would never have agreed to it, because as far as they were concerned, it was a mad Hindu practice. And meditation in those days, and we're talking, late 1970s, was just unheard of. Now everybody's doing mindfulness or whatever, and meditation.
But you're talking about those sort of family background and so on. There's there's a sense of openness to that sounds like it's part of what you're defining as the authenticity part.
Interesting question, and I'm not quite sure where we're going on that one, but yes, my family, my grandfather was a tap dancer on the one hand, and he and his brother used to tap dance around the world, in fact. And they actually tap danced with the legendary escapologist Houdini in the East End. But they also were inventors, and they invented the little things. I think you have them actually on your spectacles. These little nodules, do. Yes, those are called, and I'm sure you know this, Facey Fit nose pads. And my grandfather and his brother invented those, and because he invented this thing, I don't know why, he went into the optical trade, and he started to make spectacle frames. So my ex-wife and I went on a 4 months transcendental meditation teacher training course, and that completely transformed my life. I began to get this calling. It wasn't a voice, but it was a sort of inner feeling that I was kind of like I had to go into business, with absolutely no understanding of where that calling was coming from. Then I started to look at my family history, which I hadn't really done before, and I realised that my grandfather and his brother and my uncle were inventors, and they were also far-sighted, so they could also see the future, and they could see that those little noddly things, I mean, who knew, would make them a fortune.
But that's interesting that you say you're calling to go into business rather than, I'm guessing at no point did you think I'm going to be an entrepreneur, because I'm not sure anybody sets out to be an entrepreneur, but it's a label that gets attached to people who have certain achievements in business, perhaps.
Yes. I had no idea. In fact, the word it existed, but it wasn't in common parlance. Now if I say it, you kind of assume that I set up my own businesses from scratch, I guess, but that's what I did do. But I had no feeling to do that. I actually set up my first business because I had an argument with my last boss over his fridge. So the next day I did it, what any normal person would do, I resigned. And there was an amicable divorce from him, because he then said, I said, well, listen, I'm not going to leave you in the lurch with the Granada program. I'll carry on as a consultant for 3 months overseeing that. But I can't, I've got to, that was the impetus. I've got to leave. I've got to do something on my own. And so probably 3 days later, when the full impact of what I'd done dawned on me, I thought, I better do something. So I'll form a cable TV franchise. I mean, why wouldn't I? I was already on the board of Windsor Television. I lived in Camden, in the borough of Camden. So I put an advert in the local paper and asked for people to join the board. I'd never had a day's business experience, not like that, not setting up a business. And I asked my accountant to do me a business plan. And then I went to various companies like Logica and Cable and Wireless and Nicholas Construction, who were interested, and a TV production company, who were interested in the idea of cable TV and could see the future, or they could make money from cabling streets or whatever. So that, if you like, from that family background, entrepreneur, blah, 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 got me into my first business, cable TV.
So there's a lot of stories in that. And I think
sorry about that.
Transferring that into the book, there's a lot of stories in the book.
Yes.
But now they become other people's stories.
Yes, indeed.
So what is it that brings together all of the different stories or the people that make up the book?
Okay. Well, the first thing that brought them together is my laziness, because I started to write the book about myself. But that was really hard work, and I had the idea of giving the money, any royalties, as you know, and you kindly give your royalties away to the Prince's Trust to help people get into business if they're so called. But it was a lot of work, and then again I had a sort of brainwave, well, I'm not alone here. I know lots of people who have also wandered into business. So I'm a bit of a nonconformist, and I don't like the idea that you can only get into business if you've done a business degree. So I think there are other ways. So I began to think about who I knew who had actually gone into business, again, without any traditional training, And maybe through coincidence, maybe through destiny, and so on. And I discovered virtually everybody in the book. I think there's 12 interviews apart from my own story in the book, and everybody had got into business by accident, and quite often by coincidence, some strange coincidence. So one person in the book, for instance, Monica Dodi, who's an American friend of mine, was at a party, and the founders of MTV were there, and so she got to chat them up, and then she was asked to set up MTV in Europe. Now, strictly speaking, that's not entrepreneur. She calls herself an intrapreneur because she was basically, you can't imagine MTV was a startup company, but she was basically the first person in Europe, and she was based in Camden, and I sold through my cable business. I signed up the first MTV contract in the UK, so we knew each other from that. But her story is very interesting because she did a number of roles. She was in a greetings card company and all sorts of little ventures herself, and then she got this role in MTV. Another person in the book is a chap called Bernard Fry. And Bernard Fry is it's funny, he's a secretary. He's British, French, but I met him through business. He was a competitor, and he tells in the book the story about how I embraced him as a competitor, which is part of my thinking. You know, basically, you have a competitor. Most people think they need to kill the competitor. They need to kill the competition, and he was like that. And I demonstrated how you could actually build a rapport with a competitor, and not necessarily go for the jugular with them, but actually learn about your own business, grow in your own business, look at how you can grow as a business, rather than trying to destroy them by doing what they already do better. So it's a technique that he developed, which he says I helped him do, which helped him develop the business as, in his view, you know, he says authentic business, because he's actually also is very good to his staff. And the other thing, as I said, there's two aspects to it. One is how you treat your staff, and the other is, do you spot destiny signs? And this sounds a bit out there, but it's something I totally believe anybody can see for themselves. This idea of destiny showing you signs.
So you've touched on a number of those stories and on the authenticity aspect, and what it's making me think is I doubt that we could talk to any business owner or any entrepreneur who would describe themselves as inauthentic.
Yes.
I guess everybody would describe themselves as being true to their word, true to themselves, taking good care of their staff and so on. So how do you make a distinction between the people that you would call authentic and the people that you wouldn't, even though they might say that they are?
Okay. Well, first of all, I can't make that judgment. Be really clear. I can't make that judgment. But there are certain people I will never do business with that I've met. And in fact, Marcus Watson is another interviewee who talks a lot about how you begin to judge people, whether they're your sort of people, whether you can do business, whether they honour their word. And as I said, we all can meet complete bastards in business. You know, I've met all sorts of very strange people who've done very odd things, which aren't very pleasant. Doesn't mean to say that they're inauthentic, because who can be the judge of that? But you can be the judge of yourself, which is that if you look inside yourself, do you really feel the way you've acted is true to yourself and to other people? I bought a business from a chap who shall be nameless, and he gives a lot to charity. I mean, he's quite a well-known person, and he basically put a clause into the business that I was buying and didn't tell me about it, but then he arranged that we meet at his lawyer's at 11 p.m. at night, and again, without getting into any details, I was buying a business from him which I desperately needed to fulfill a contract, so I was kind of a bit over a barrel. And then he put into it that the equipment, much to my, I had no idea, he had a personal guarantee on. for about £1 million. And he put a clause, and he didn't turn up. He sent a lieutenant along, and the lieutenant brings out this piece of paper and says, he wants you to sign this. And I read it. It's 11:30 or something. I thought, so I just signed it. And then I read it in more detail. And if I went bust, I would owe him £1 million, basically, because the company that he bought the equipment from would come after him, and I needed to personally guarantee. Anyway, we did the deal, and then he says, I want to take you and your wife to Venice, on me. So he takes us to Venice, and over dinner, and I'm not making this up, in St Mark's Square, overlooking the river there, he burst into tears. And I said, what's all this about? Well, I'd made a mistake in business, and I'd made lots of mistakes. I'd opened a magazine with Granada Television, and it wasn't going to work out. I could see it wasn't going to work out. He said, that magazine that you have opened is going to lose you money. You're going to go bust. Then you're not going to pay for the equipment. Then you're going to owe me £1 million. I said, well, it's okay. If the magazine doesn't work out, I'm going to close it down, and I've already put that money aside. It's not a problem. And he says, and I said, what's the problem anyway? I mean, okay, why are you so upset? He says, because then I'll take your house, and you'll be homeless. And I said, okay, well, there is a solution to that problem. And he said, what? I said, you could let me off. He said, oh, I could never do that. I swear to you. And so it goes back to, I can't judge who's authentic.
So he's going to screw you, but he just wants you to know he feels really bad about it.
Yeah, but he's great. He gives he gives millions of pounds to charity. So authenticity is really in the eye of the beholder, I agree. But it's really asking people to consider from their heart whether what they're doing, especially now. I think in the, during the pandemic, I think a lot of people have done some soul searching about what they're doing with their lives, and there's been lots of change. And I don't think personally there's not going to be a new normal, in the sense that the new normal won't be like the old normal, in my humble opinion. And I think a lot of people are re-evaluating, do they want to be working in that particular company? Can they still work in the company? Because lots of people are shedding staff. And I think being in business on your own, with all the risks that are involved, can be immensely satisfying.
So it's starting to sound like the book is really stories that sort of illustrate and inspire somebody that if they accidentally end up as an entrepreneur, then to be guided by their heart, their morals, their spirit,
yes,
as much as by the easy, hard measures that often people focus on.
Yes, I think it's divided. It's not, I'd say right at the beginning, it's not a business manual. It's not how do I do this. At the end of the book, at the end of the interviews, I discuss various things like this thing I've just mentioned with the guy in Venice, about how you have to be wise, you have to be savvy about what people are like. It's foolish to think everybody is going to act in your best interest. So you have to be aware. You have to be aware of things like who are the sort of people that you'd want on your board. You'd have to be aware about, if you're getting outside investment, what sort of companies should they be? Private equity companies? Should they be trade companies? I give examples only from my experience about sort of events that have happened and what I've learned. But other people in the book also give experiences. So my cousin Jason Kirk, who's in the book, he's the only male member of the family who's still in the spectacle trade. He had a business which was quite successful, but he brought in the wrong investors. And he was following his heart, designing frames that appealed to him. A lot of, still has, as I'll explain, a lot of celebrities who bought his spectacle frames. He just had a shop in Covent Garden, and somehow everybody began to know about him and came. But then his investors just wanted him to make money, and he couldn't take it. So he started again, and with his wife, they started right from the very beginning again, and they have another successful company. But this time, they got a group of angels. That's wealthy entrepreneurs to back him, and they again are on his wavelength, and they're not interested only in the fact it's profitable. They're interested in helping him as a person develop the business, and they provide a non-executive director or whatever he wants as someone in this group of angels who is supportive. And what again you find is that a lot of people, once they've made money, just want to give back and help other people. Other people just want to make more money. And we can think of some names there, but we're not going to mention them here. But there's a huge number of entrepreneurs, and one in the book, for instance, is Sir Harry Solomon, who is probably the most well-known of the people interviewed. He started a number of food businesses, and he's now, I think he's in his 80s, and he spends all his time now, he works harder than I ever will work out of his office, and he works a good day every day, but he backs entrepreneurs, and he's backed companies that Marcus, I mentioned earlier, is founded, and he spends all his time on philanthropic ventures and helping young people get into business, which is amazing. So he's an extraordinary person, and I think his story alone is interesting.
Right. So if there was one message that you could give to a reader or a potential reader of the book, what would that be?
If you have any calling to go into business, or if you are just intrigued by the book, then it will open your eyes to and tell you from the viewpoint of other people and myself what's involved, and that will or will not light a spark. And I coach people sometimes now, and they come to me with ideas, and I don't think I've ever told somebody that they shouldn't be in business, but I have. I can see from your nodding, you've probably seen this, some people, and they're just desperate to go into business, and you can't fault that, but then they talk to you and you realise they're not going to, it's not for them.
So it sounds like the message is, if you're in business, or you're interested in business or starting a business, and you're looking for a better way to do that, perhaps a more human, more ecological, more honest way to do that, then the book is going to inspire you with the stories in there.
I hope so.
Of different ways that could be achieved, or it's going to put you off going into business
I hope it
completely,
does both.
which is a good thing.
Yes.
Either way,
the story should be interested in themselves, so it's a good read, I think. But yeah, I mean, at the end of it, you'll get a clear, I hope, idea of whether you should be in business or it's a good book. That's it. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's fantastic. Thanks very much, Stephen.
Thank you.